to start is an introduction. So could you please start with your background and introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Happy to. So thank you, Sergey. So Dr. Joseph Geraci. I'm a CEO of Netramar Corp. I'm a professor of molecular medicine at Queen's University, and I'm a professor at the Augusta University at the Center of Biotechnology in Georgia, United States. So in terms of a background, so I started off really being interested in the brain, studying neuroscience and biochemistry, but I ended up doing many courses in mathematics. So I ended up doing a lot of pure mathematics, and then I did a master's in pretty pure subjects in mathematics, and then a PhD. I was working on some mathematical physics problems here and there, and then an Israeli physicist named Daniel Lidar gave me a problem in quantum computation, where we were trying to understand really what is the fundamental power of this system. And so I used mathematics and statistical physics to solve this problem. So I ended up with a PhD in that field. And at that time, when I was working on the problem in the beginning, the United States government saw how I was approaching it. And so I was very fortunate. They offered to pay my way. And so I moved to the United States, to Los Angeles, and I became part of the University of Southern California in the engineering department, and part of University of Toronto mathematics. So shared between the two, but I lived in Los Angeles so I can spend time with my supervisor and really focus on this problem and do math on the beach and play basketball.
And then, that sounds nice.
Right, it was nice, yeah. And then what I did was that turned into a lot of opportunities because of Dr. Lidar's network and other people that were looking at my work. But I decided to come back to Toronto, and I joined Princess Margaret Hospital because an award was offered for me to do a postdoc in oncology. And the attractive thing there was a big part of my work as a mathematician had to do with graph theory and networks, connected networks and complex systems. So I've always been interested, as I told you early on, my background was very biological, right? And so I did a postdoc in oncology, and then while doing that, my supervisor, Igor Geraci, was really great. He's teaching me on how to think about systems biology and all this. And I started getting this idea that there was a way to deal with medical data in a new way. So I started germinating this idea. I then ended up getting another postdoc from the Canadian government to do machine learning in medicine. And so I did that for a couple years. And that's when I started, I became a professor at Queen's, just an assistant professor at the same time. And then, so it was right before machine learning started getting exciting, right before people started getting excited. That's right where I started. So I was very lucky. The Canadian government was smart to give me this grant and to do this. And then I ended up winning another postdoc award from Eli Lilly, the pharma company, to use these methods I was building, but for neuropsychiatry. And so that turned into me becoming a scientist at some of the institutes at the University of Toronto. And I got to work on major depression, really learn a lot about mood disorders. And then what I started realizing was that machine learning has a very big problem with these data because, number one, just because a medical doctor labels a patient as having Alzheimer's or major depression, it's not very good for machine learning because the labels don't reflect some really basic truth at the molecular level. Some people are depressed. People can be depressed for many different reasons. And there's multiple ways of going into dementia. And there's multiple ways of breast cancer manifesting, as we all know, right? And so I started realizing that we needed to make a change. So I started, thinking about this. And eventually what I did is I quit all my academic positions and I went to work at Equifax, where I was able to play with really huge data. So Equifax does, background checks, credit scores, and things like this, fraud. And so this was very exciting. So I joined them in Canada, and I did some work in the U.S. as well, where we were looking at very large populations. So I used to race different machine learning methods on millions of data points. It was a lot of fun. And I did that and then raised a couple $1 million and then started the company. And the basis of the company, Netramark, was this idea that what we need to do, so there was a lot of companies out there that were building biomarkers and other companies that were trying to design novel drugs, which I think is great. But what we focused on was to find really the ground truth in these complex diseases. So what we do is we build maps of the disease that you can actually interact with, and not using standard machine learning methods. Standard machine learning methods will not replicate. We actually just did a test literally half an hour ago where we showed how really beautiful techniques in machine learning failed brutally. So we can get into it later, but that's basically the idea. What we do is we build roadmaps so that you know where to apply the drug, how to run the clinical trial, where do you focus, because these complex diseases you're never going to find one drug that treats everybody. There's a lot of mechanisms at play. And so we're discovering exactly how these patient populations exist, what they look like, all the different types, and what's driving each subtype. So
Yeah.
that's
So pretty much, if I understand you correctly, you take the disease and you're trying to understand, but so what then you do with this big data? You try to understand how to treat this disease, or you're trying to find the cure for that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Okay, so number one, in medicine, big data is rare. Okay, and I'm talking like in general. Of course, there's groups like in England, they're doing 100,000 genome. It's very nice, right? But in general, if you have a pharma company, Sergey, and you come to me and you have 80 patients, you're very proud. You're like, look, I have 80 patients. I'm like, oh, great, 80, right? So what we need to do is, depending on who we work with, because we work with some pharma companies that have hundreds, other pharma companies only have small amounts. So we built a system that's flexible. And you have to understand, statisticians have been very busy analyzing this data for a very long time. So there's a lot of techniques. Not everything is deep neural networks. Yes, if you have 100,000 samples, deep neural networks would be very nice to make predictions. But what we're doing here is different. We needed to find a way. We built a technology that basically it optimizes what you can learn for real about from a small data set. And the way we do it is the machine's very clever at saying, okay, I don't understand these people, but these people come together for this reason. And then, so Sergey, then to answer your question is we have two platforms, okay? One platform is designed for medical scientists and for medical doctors, okay? And the special thing about medical doctors and medical scientists is they have a deep intuition about the patient population. And then you have somebody who's really good machine learning and they have a good intuition on how to build models, or a statistician. What we do is one platform is designed to remove the barrier between the medical people and the complex models. So this one thing, what it does is the machine makes hypotheses in the form of clusters, very easy to see. And then the doctor or the physician or the scientist can interact and ask the machine, why did you do this? Right? So for example, in lung cancer, you can see some hypotheses are simple, adenocarcinoma versus squamous. But in other perspectives that the physician can interact with, the machine creates other subdivisions, says, oh, what is this? And you find out the machine's making hypotheses about aggressiveness, about where it's invading, metastatic property, all this is very, very nice. So even with your simple wrong label, the machine can make inferences and hypotheses that the physician can say, oh, that's garbage, or that's interesting. You see the power and you accelerate. The other side, because you brought up a great question, is we built a robot, a biochemistry robot, that understands the way your proteins and genes interact. And what it does is it removes the person, it runs the AI itself, it extracts the insights, and it creates hypotheses about where do you drug. So now you can see all this years of study I've been doing in math and physics and medicine is really to put together how do you understand networks and how do you get a computer to integrate all this information, to extract information from this that can turn into, yes, treatments or ways to improve clinical trials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you tried standard approaches of machine learning and didn't work, so you have to develop a new pretty much method to attack this problem.
Yeah, so okay, so let me say this with a caveat. You know, statistical methods are wonderful. Support vector machines are beautiful. Random forest is probably one of the most amazing tools out there. Boosted trees is probably the best one. If you have pictures, deep neural network, you know, there's so many techniques. What we do is we modestly use all of these tools that people have invented. They're very nice. But the big difference here is that we needed to build two special things. One was an unsupervised method that goes way beyond principal components and t-SNE and UMAP and all these type of things in order to create intelligent hypotheses that could generalize. That's the problem, Sergey. It's the generalization. When you have small data, you have to be very careful about what you pull out because it won't replicate, right? So we had to solve that problem. And then the second problem is what I was talking to about, a way for the machine to give very clear explanation for what it did find so that a human can interact and use its intelligence and work together with the machine. So we use everything. Like if you work with Nutchermark, you get whatever you want, right? We're experts, and like we have an imaging expert that used to work in self-driving cars. He's over there, right? But you know, we combine our forces to do this properly and you know, to provide insights that are as close to the ground truth as possible. Yeah. And really ultimately this is about the idea that, you know, when a doctor says that someone has multiple sclerosis, it's a general statement about these lesions, but there's multiple ways that these things could manifest and be treated, right? So it's giving that visibility.
Yeah, so, and now you're talking about things like very complex problems. And if you're thinking about quantum computing, how quantum computers could help in solving this particular problem?
Yeah, okay. So this particular problem about the heterogeneity, where I see potential for quantum and something we started playing with, is at the network level, right? So, and let me explain what I mean. So you and I take a group of people and they have ALS, right? Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, okay. And so you take these people and you say, okay, we use machine learning and statistics, and we learn some people, their ALS develops here, so they have trouble swallowing in the beginning. Other people, they develop in their fingers or in their body, right? So then the machine says, oh, this is the difference. Okay, that's nice. Then you have to take these genetic differences and you have to start understanding what is the molecular pathways that are driving this. Now, there's molecular pathways are relatively simple. It just says these proteins are all connected together to form some biological task. But the approach that people like Igor Geraci and Gary Bader and these people at University of Toronto and places around the world are doing is they use protein interaction networks. So in our bodies, proteins, they touch each other like this, or they grab on, and they very complex. And so mathematically, it becomes monstrous because there's like over 20,000 of these proteins with millions of edges. So in order for us to use mathematics to go through this and say, hey, maybe this is the best way to attack this, it's too much. So I do it now. We have a system that does it, but we have to cheat because it's too big, right? And I think that if we can learn how to encode graphs in quantum computers, we will at least one day when the quantum computers are much more robust, we'll at least get a quadratic speed up. So instead of 100 days of computation, it becomes reasonable. We can do it in 10 days. We can actually start finding some very crucial things. Now, people might think that's not much of a difference, but it's a significant difference because it will allow people to iterate. Not only that, and to include a much bigger picture of what's going on biochemically. And it's getting even more complicated because, the pathways are getting more sophisticated. Our protein interaction networks are becoming more complete, right? And what this is going to allow us to do is allow us to see different ways we can attack disease through this lens. So that's the one way. The other way is obvious. So, and I mean obvious because I'll tell you a story. Back in 2005, I was invited to Los Alamos, right? Which I was very honored to be included amongst these really great people. One of the people there was the great Alan Aspuro-Guzik, he used to be a professor at Harvard in quantum chemistry, and now he's at the University of Toronto. So we met there, and he was one of the reasons why I was actually going to go and work at Harvard. But so what we were all doing is we were coming together to answer the question, what are we going to do with quantum computers in 2021, right? And we were all like, oh, we're going to do all this great stuff. But what we really learned was, what we all decided was the truth was, molecules are quantum creatures. And when I try to get my computer that I see your face on right now, it's a very powerful alien computer with GPUs and all this, but in order to simulate a molecule, I have to turn my classical environment into quantum, and this is the big gap. This is what's happening. We're going to close this gap, and we're going to be able to simulate docking in a way that we've never imagined. And what I mean, what I mean by docking is when the molecule fits inside the protein. But again, we have to wait. So there's groups out there now who are already doing, including us, who are doing some simulations in the material world. Some groups are very serious about it. That's what they focus on, and I love what they're doing. But they're trying to take advantage of these small qubit near-term devices. And it's giving something, right? But they're still noisy. But anyway, that's the answer. From my perspective, it's modeling the complexity of the biological systems, and then eventually using the fact that biochemistry is quantum. We're going to start being able to simulate locally, right? And understand drugs in a much better way. Yeah, maybe some other places, but yeah, that's my answer right now.
Yeah. So as I understand, classical computers, they don't have chance. Let's say in supercomputers, we cannot expect that, let's say in 10 years, it will be better classical supercomputers. Here, we really need the power of quantum computers to solve these problems because it's too complicated, right?
Look, theoretically, we don't know if you're right, but we think you're right. Okay, no, I'm okay. That's not fair. That's not fair. Okay, let me put it this way. There are problems. There are algorithmic problems that quantum computers can never touch. They're too big. They're too big for classical. Too big for quantum. But we now know that quantum is going to allow us to do certain things much better. And one of the reasons that is because of the way we're able to encode the initial data in superposition and take advantage of entanglement. This gives us a monstrous. That's really where the advantage is. It's the representation of the problem, the way you can feed it into the computer, and the way the quantum computer can hold it inside its Hilbert space. Right? Its brain is a Hilbert space. It's this exponential space, right? Yeah. That's the way to think of it. And then we'll be able to manipulate the data in a way that we couldn't classically. And I have very strong confidence that if we can solve the scaling problems in quantum, we're going to be able to simulate chemical systems in a way that's impossible classically. Impossible.
Yeah.
Right? And there's already problems like, while Google was doing their work, when they claimed quantum supremacy, I was quietly doing it on the IBM quantum network system. I was doing it there. I was sampling from a distribution of unitary matrices. Now, to me, it was natural because quantum circuits are unitary, and random matrix theory is a very interesting place because there's a lot of, and this becomes very interesting. I don't want to get all, too mathematical, but I am a mathematician. But I'll try to break it down. Is that there's properties hidden inside random matrices about the certain properties that we call the spectra of the random matrices that have properties everywhere in all over the world. The way that the cells in a chicken's eye are distributed, the way that certain train systems that don't run on time, the way they're distributed, the way prime numbers are distributed, like there's a universality there. And so it's something I'm a little bit obsessed with because I see this and I think it's quite powerful. So this is where I'm seeing near-term quantum. I'm using these systems to sample from this type of noise, right? Because we can generate these things quick and sample. And that's essentially what we're doing now. And I think now I'm trying to figure out what can I use this for really, really practically. And I have some ideas, but anyway, I'm not going to talk about that. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's quite interesting because, one of the potential problems which people in quantum field always talking about is like, how big quantum computer do you need? Because this is like a $1 billion question. Is like, if you know when these computers become really powerful and you know what type of problems you can solve. So if you're considering the problem of solving, let's say, disease, what type of computer, how many qubits do you need? Like millions, thousands?
Yeah. So okay. So there's this very cool theorem in computer science mathematics it's called Vapnik-Chervonenkis, not complexity, but capacity.
Yeah.
Right? Vapnik-Chervonenkis capacity. Okay, so one of the things I specialize in classically is what we call shattering. How well can you separate some data, right? And so the systems we built on NetChartMark are really, really good at shattering data. Even if it can't explain everybody, it can find things that are in common in a subpopulation. Okay, we now know that quantum neural networks have superior shattering. So that's already true. Okay, now, one of my guys was yelling at me yesterday because I said, I want to use a quantum computer to give some of our people the experience of doing very simple feature selection through quantum principal components, right? So we have this lung cancer data. I'm like, we can do classical feature selection. Why can't we use quantum principal components to do quantum feature selections, and we can push it through our very beautiful NetChartMark interface? And he says, because we can only check 2 variables at a time. We have qubit limitations, but we can do it. It's working. It works already, right? Like we even wrote a paper where we used a D-Wave machine to train a Boltzmann machine on some data, right? But I think we're just playing in kindergarten right now. This stuff really. The answer is, according to some people, we're going to need millions of qubits because of the error correcting problem. Now, as a mathematician, I always see another way, right? So, for example, Daniel Lidar, who I was talking about earlier, who brought me into this field, he discovered me, so to speak, right? And I discovered him. Great guy. He's an expert on error correction, right? I will never argue with him. So he has his own debates about this, but I think you agree that he admits that you're going to need literally half of the qubits in order to do proper error correction. Okay, so one thing that I always wanted to talk about was if we can encode a quantum computer on a two-dimensional surface, so you have like a quantum field theory type of environment, so you can encode your qubits topologically, then you might get some error-free qubits for free. The problem is the engineering is a mess, right? So the answer is like the way we're going about it now, I think that we're going to need a lot of qubits, but I'll never say that it's a must. Maybe there's going to be a group out there that might be able to give us a couple thousand qubits, and we're going to be able to perform some amazing things with that. So never say never.
Yeah, that's true. And actually now I have another question. So when we talk about quantum computers and let's say to predict how to treat patients, would you, let's say, doctors trust predictions of quantum computers? Because I think even from engineering, sometimes if quantum computers predict something, people say, oh, how you can check it? Because you cannot check this prediction with classical computers. And some engineers even say, okay, is it really reliable output? Can we trust this answer? But now if you talk about people and patients, let's say you predict something with quantum computer, but you cannot check it with classical. Do you think that doctors will believe you and say, okay, that's a good data, let's take it?
So I think you understand this. The way a quantum computer works is that you have to repeat the process many times, and you get a peak, right? And then you trust your answer, right? Okay. But I work with these people now, right? The truth is that even classical AI is a problem a lot of the time because they want to understand, and that's why we focus so much on explainability, right? We need to be able to tie back. So the way I would see this happening is this. We use quantum computers to understand the circuitry. We come up with hypotheses. We evaluate it classically, and then we do experiments. I think if you're using quantum computers in the back end to make discoveries about something in the beginning, I think that's going to be fine because you need to verify it in animal models and human models anyway. So drug discovery will be fine. But yeah, like a quantum computer making a decision between whether you're going to give your child a surgery or not, no, that's not going to happen people. You're right. The transparency is not there. It's very tricky.
And if you say thinking about these problems, what like the main bottleneck? Is it really computational thing? So we just need more powerful computers to tackle the problem of disease treatment, or is it something else?
So I actually think we have powerful enough tools now to attack this idea of how to optimally treat individuals. What we've been focused on here is developing new techniques that are very good to work at the individual precision level. So this is not machine learning anymore. It's like what it is you have a big funnel. You start with statistics, you do machine learning, you come down, you do interactivity, and then you let some mathematics at the end organize your patient population and give you an answer and explain exactly why it's doing it. This is what we're building, right? So it's not just machine learning. So I'll give you an example. We were working with a pharmaceutical company for a psychiatric drug, right? Small pharma company in Europe. And we helped them understand these people are responding better than these people. So when you design your next trial, keep that in mind. Okay, thank you. We got paid, and now we'll help them in the future. But they called us back and they said, we had an adverse reaction. Somebody in the trial, something went wrong. So I said, okay, tell me who the person, so they called me and said, can you help us? Can you find it in one of your maps? So they start talking our language, right? So we go and we find this woman in the map. And I said, yeah, we found her. She's by herself, but right on top in the map, right? It's like having two landmarks next to each other. They're right on top of each other like this, right on top of each other. And so I said, this other person is just like that. And the variables are, the reason they're there, the machine told us, is because their cardiac measurements were off. They had rapid heartbeat and some other stuff. They went, wow, the side effect was cardiac. So they pulled the other person off, and it was very nice, right? It's a nice story. But that's the level we need. There's already enough power to go down to that precision. And I think this is just work we have to do. We have to develop, we have to work with the right pharma companies. We have to get more data. We have to grow in this direction. It's more of a cultural change in medicine. Okay? Now, the computational bottleneck has to do more with the discovery of what disease really is. Is there a type of schizophrenia that's closer to heart disease than high blood pressure? Like, for example, like something crazy. Is that possible? Is there, right? You know, like we're starting to understand now that for certain people, Alzheimer's is just a certain type of diabetes in the brain. It's insulin resistance in the brain. Like, oh, that's a metabolic, right? So suddenly these people that you didn't expect to be near each other, Alzheimer's and diabetes, they start moving together. I'm not trying to scare people. It doesn't mean if you have diabetes, you're going to get Alzheimer's. I'm saying that, you can have liver insulin resistance or you can have brain insulin resistance. You can have different types of, right? And so we're changing. So that's what I mean. So with our technologies, we're starting to change the way we see disease and how pharma companies can attack it. But coming up with novel ways to do gene editing. Where do we edit the genes? Designing new drugs. That's the bottleneck. Yes. Right. That's starting to happen. Right. Protein folding has been through reinforcement learning, as you guys probably heard about recently. There's models now that are coming out that are beautiful, right? And that was just an increase in computational power plus using adversarial machine learning and all that. So yeah, I think where the computational power is going to help is in understanding our biochemistry better. That's where.
And I think you made a very important point, which I want to emphasize one more time, just so I better understand it. So you're really talking about of treatment for patients for really individual levels. So it's not like you make one point, this is your disease, but you really try to understand what other diseases are around, how they correlated, and you really try to see the individual level. Wow.
We're trying to understand the engineering behind these different diseases. These labels that we've been using is the best that we can do because it's humans making the labels and they make observation. And it's been very good. Medicine has come very far. But now it's changing. I think it's now time for medicine to become mathematical, right? A long time ago, it became statistical, evidence-based. Very good. But now, it's going to be deeper. Like literally, we're going to understand the engineering behind the diseases. That's what I'm focused on. Because then a company like Atomwise or In Silico Medicine or Cyclica, they come and they say, hey, we have this drug we designed. And I can say, yeah, you know what? That's going to really work for these people, these people, these people. Right? So it's an amazing opportunity in this space.
Yeah. And you're really talking about 100% practical issues. You really take the real disease and trying to solve how you can help patients. So it's not like, because usually for quantum computers, when people say about practical problems, they usually say, okay, we have to wait. But now you're really talking about specific practical problem which exist, right?
Yes. And it's exemplified by the difference between Watson Health. So Watson is this amazing cognitive computer. It's really good with language. You know what I'm talking about? The Watson IBM
Maybe
Watson.
say a few words about Watson.
Yeah, so IBM Watson is a deep neural network based natural language processing wonder. It can play Jeopardy. You know the game Jeopardy?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's very good at that, which shows a very sophisticated machine learning. And what Watson Health did is they used the system to learn all the literature about medicine. The problem, I think that's a great approach, don't get me wrong. But the difference is this. Watson Health learns from the literature, and I have to say something, much of the scientific literature in medicine will not replicate, right? It's good work, it's academic, it's scientists, it's good. It advances our knowledge, but a lot of it doesn't replicate. So Watson learns about all this stuff and makes connections, and it does a good job. And I'll give you an example. this actually happened. I can't be too transparent, but Watson said for these Parkinson's people, take drug X. It recommended, okay?
Yeah.
The Netra AI system said the same thing. But the difference is Watson got it from the literature and we got it from the Parkinson's patient genetic level, okay? Now, so our machine made a hypothesis about this drug X and Watson made about drug X. The difference is that our system said this will only work for about 17% of Parkinson's patients. So if you try to run a trial, you're dead. So that's the difference, is the resolution of understanding. So what I believe should happen is we got to sandwich these techniques.
Yeah.
Right? Because that language processing capabilities of Watson is very good because it closes the gap, which is an important part of all this quantum and AI and all this. It's important. It's not just about a bunch of people trained like me with multiple degrees in math and physics and medicine. I'm talking about taking a doctor and being able to close the gap, right? And that's what I'm about, right? That and about redefining the diseases so that doctors are in a position in the future. 10 years from now, young doctors will be able to say, oh, we're going to take this sample from you and now the machine's going to say, you look like this. It's no longer going to say Alzheimer's. It's going to say, you look like these people that responded to escitalopram.
Yeah. And okay, I'm looking at the time and I think it will be my last question because it's getting already close. But what will be your vision for the, let's say, short-term perspectives and for the long-term, let's say, 10 years and more? So what do you think will happen with the field?
So quantum or medicine or AI, which one?
So let's say I would now I'm very interested in medicine, but if you can tangle it with quantum, I will be very happy.
Yeah, okay. I think that we're on the precipice of something new with companies like Insilico and Cyclica and Atomwise. We have to see how their discovery of novel molecules, how it's going to affect medicine. The problem is that a lot of us are hoping that gene editing is going to be able to solve a lot of critical problems that drugs can't. So I see the world in the next 10 years, you're going to see these type of techniques being more and more explored. We can't do it right yet. It's still difficult, but we're moving forward. This and nano techniques and all that, like going beyond the drug paradigm and going about how do we attack the disease. And that's why Netramark is situated the way it is. It's because if we can unlock the keys on how to do this, we have the map when the gene editing tools are ready. Yeah. That's what we're doing. We're building them. We're anticipating this, and at the same time helping with the drugs and all that. Okay, so there's that perspective. So I think that's going to happen. Things are going to become much more precise. Pharma companies are going to be able to shrink their clinical trials. It might take a bit longer, but meaning it might take beyond 10 years to get there, but it's starting to happen, right? And then with quantum, I think quantum is going to struggle. It's going to be very exciting for a lot of us, but it's going to struggle until we can string together many, many more qubits, right? So I'm very excited about IonQ. I don't know if you saw my picture on LinkedIn with my new IonQ jacket, right? but some of these groups like IonQ, they're starting to put together really clean qubits. If this continues, Sergey, I don't know. I won't be able to predict because there might be a sudden leap in 6 years, right? So, yeah. So I see things getting more precise, and I see more people like me entering the field. That's what and I'm already doing. I'm already helping young quantum people come into the field and get them ready for this like brave new medical world, right? So.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a point when I thank you for your time and efforts. I really appreciate talking to you. You have very interesting stories, and for me, it sounds very good.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you, Sergey.